Hello and welcome to the archive section of my channel. In here you'll find videos that I've made of walking routes in the past. One which inspired me was the story of Lorna Doone. It's a romantic novel by Rd Blackwall set on Exmoor. So I decided to visit all the places that I believe associated with that story. Whether it's fact or fiction I don't know. But the landscape of Exmoor must have inspired Rd Blackwall to write this novel, and I think it's an inspirational place for all sorts of art projects. So come with me on a journey of discovery, and I hope you enjoy it on the trail of Lorna Doone.
The Exmoor National Park lies in the southwest corner of England. It covers an area of approximately 265 square miles. It has over 700 miles of footpaths and bridleways. For me, the fascination of Exmoor is its varied landscape, with its lovely fields with tall hedgerows, with the open moorland and the heathland, and of course its wildlife. I love the red deer and the Exmoor pony. Unfortunately, this rare breed of pony is now more rarer than the panda. I also love the lovely thatched cottages such as these at Selworthy.
You can paint it, Mummy, you can paint it and colour it.
This is really a lovely little village set in the north-east section of Exmoor. And there are ancient pack-horse bridges like this one at Alliford. I should imagine this photograph is in everybody's album. And the mallards here also at Alliford. And while the buzzards soar above us, I'm going to take you on a wondrous journey on this Rambling About series. I'm going to take you all over Exmoor, over its coastline, over its moorland and heathland, and of course its medieval bridges such as this at Tower Steps. We'll climb over the occasional stile, and we'll reach the highest point on Exmoor, Dunkery Beacon. But on this special Rambling About programme, I'm going to take you to most of the places associated with the Lorna Doone story. But where do you begin? Oh, we could start here at All Church, where inside the church there is a memorial to Rd Blackwall, author of Lorna Doone. Well, we could go further afield and start back over in Dulverton, where right beside the River Barle we've got the lovely bridge, but there's also a statue of Lorna herself right next door to the National Park offices. Well, In fact, our journey is going to start outside of Exmoor. We're going to go right over to Tiverton, where this lovely town stands beside the River Ex. And as we make our way through the town, we'll pass many of the old buildings that Tiverton still has. I believe this old building used to be a former church. Well, this is our destination. This is Old Blundell's School. Now, this is where Rd Blackwall came in 1837, and he stayed at the school until 1843 before leaving to go to Exeter College. And this small triangle of grass in the front of the school is called affectionately the Ironing Box, and this is where our novel's hero John Ridd had an epic fight with Robin Snell. Well, in November 1673, John was picked up from Old Blundell's School by a farmhand, John Fry. They made their way back to Dulverton as we have now. It was here that they stopped for hot mountain pasties in a local hostelry. Possibly this one, the historic White Horse, a former public house. John also had a great uncle here, Reuben Huckaback. He was a worthy clothier, and it's said to be the richest man in Dulverton. He had a profitable shop somewhere in the town. And of course it was also here that John saw a young lady maid and her children, and of course one of the children happened to be Lorna. There's still some old buildings in the town. This one here, the Doone House stores, could possibly have been Reuben Huckaback's stores. And the old church, which probably hasn't changed much since John's day. This is the cobbled walkway of church steps. Well, our journey now is going to continue further northeast across the moor, where we reach the medieval village of Dunster. This fascinating village is famed for its historic buildings. This one here is a former 14th century monk's house, but was renamed the nunnery in 1769. Well, Dunster now has a flourishing tourist trade, and there are numerous gift shops to cater for that. But back in John's day, there would have been an additional row of houses in the centre of the street known as the Shambles. This cobbled walkway leads to the octagonal yarn market. Built around about 1609, when Dunster had a thriving cloth trade. This lovely yarn market stands right beside the Luttrell Arms, which dates back to 1443. And the whole village is overlooked by this magnificent castle. Built by William de Mohun in around about 1080 and was restored again in Victorian times. It had been home to the Luttrell family between 1376 and 1976, when it was handed over to the National Trust. And now our journey continues down towards the coast to Porlock. The village stands beneath the famed Porlock Hill. It's the steepest main road hill in the country. In the centre of the village there stands St Dubricius Church. The church is named after a Celtic missionary who is said to have solemnised the marriage of King Arthur and Guinevere. There are many charming tales concerning it, and one of these is about its unusual shaped wooden spire. Some say that the devil had took off the top of the spire and put it onto the nearby church at Stoke-Perot. I believe it was damaged by a storm back in 1702. And inside the church there's an unusual shaped roof, a wagon style wooden roof. Lots of timber gone into making of that. And of course Porlock is also famed for its cottages with tall chimneys, Porlock style. Well, back to our novel. Well, Porlock could have been the place where John's father had set out from, possibly from the old Rosencrown Inn here, on his way back home, before being murdered by the Doones. It was also where Master Pook had his premises, where John Ridd had purchased 2 great packages of gunpowder and a mighty chunk of lead for a shilling. And I believe John possibly made a will here by an honest lawyer he could find. And of course Porlock is famed for its tourist industry, with some lovely buildings, restaurants, and of course another building with the Lorna Doone name. And now for something completely different, I'm going to take you on a circular walk down along the Doone Valley. Well, our starting point is here at Marm's Mead. This is the former farmhouse of the Lorna Doone farm, now a gift shop. But back in John's day, this was also the home of Nicholas Snow and his family. And Badry Water, again with another packhorse bridge. Well, these waters lead to the Lynn Rivers, where John used to fish for loaches. I think the loaches are long since gone. You might be lucky to find the occasional trout now. And what a beautiful sight in autumn, which is when I came along to do this walk. And in the courtyard of the Lorna Doone farm is a statue to Carver Doone. A fearsome looking fellow. Well, I'm now setting off on our walk. It's right beside the old ruined farmhouse near Lorna Doone farm. And I make my way further down the river. Occasionally in the summer months you have to pay to come through this area, but autumn time I got in for nothing. Well, the footpath actually continues right beside the river, and in the distance is Cloud Farm. Again, if you come in the summer months, there is a picnic area there and a cafeteria. And just a little way past Cloud Farm, we reach this memorial to Rd Blackwall. and still plenty of walkers around in autumn. Probably the best time to walk in these areas. Well, just through the old beech trees, we eventually come to a small wooden bridge. Well, this is where the site of the water slide happens to be. Now, back in John's day, when there may have been a torrent of rain, this would have been quite a rough area. But today I visited, it was quite peaceful water. Well, don't forget to bring your camera. It's well worth a lovely photograph just here. Well, I'm going to take you on a short detour off our proper track, and luckily for me there is a trackway leading up to Lank Combe, right beside the water slide. Now John would have made his way up, possibly through the actual water slide stream, up to the very top. Well, I finally reached the top, and I had a water slide on myself. Yep, sure thing. Whenever I've been up here, I've quite often fell down. Well, John would have reached the top here, this beautiful valley of Lank Combe, where he would have fell asleep and have been eventually woke up by Lorna. It's a beautiful sight in the autumn month. Well, having just negotiated the water slide, we eventually come to this lovely valley of Lank Combe. Now this is where I believe the real Lorna Doone valley is, where Carver Doone and his gang had all these houses just above the stream. Back that way is the Doone Gate, which is where I'm now going to take you. Well, this is such a lovely view at the other end of Lank Combe, looking down towards the stream. And I happened to look around, and these 4 clumps of stone covered in moss, and there's a few others in the area, I believe they used to be old buildings. Perhaps they are the Doone buildings themselves. And I think it's worthy of an investigation, just to have a look, see what used to be here, because I think there should have been a settlement here at one time. Well, this is what I believe is the Doone Gate, the rock of the Doone Gate. This is situated at the far end of the valley. And what of these? I saw these, they look like little standing stones, possibly gravestones. Maybe they were the graves of the Doones. Well, that was our short detour. Now we're back on our proper walk, following the course of the Mead River, Blackberry water. Another beautiful sight in the autumn, the golden colours. Well, eventually you reach these former ruins of the Brethren of St Jerusalem. Now, in lots of guidebooks they reckon that these are possibly the Doone houses, but as far as I read it, the Doone houses were up in Lancombe, above the waterslide. These are further down the river, the Badgery. Who knows? Again, this is worth looking at in the autumn months when the old bracken is rotted away, so you can actually see them. And as we turn the corner, there are more ruins, more stone buildings. And a moorland sheep. You'll probably come across quite a few of these on your walk. Well, several years back, Frederick Knight and his family tried to colonise the moor and turn it into more farmland. And this is some of the old stone walls that he built. And this is the ruins of a former shepherd's hut, blew up in the Second World War as target practice. Not much left of it now. And a little more of the Knight's Wall. Well, now for a change of scenery. As we're bending in a horseshoe shape on our walk now, we're heading over moorland. We're more or less doubling back on ourselves. I should imagine it to be quite bleak out here in the winter storms. Eventually we reach this stream. Now this water actually goes back down to Lancombe, which is the stream I showed you earlier. And it's muddy, so you probably need a leap and a jump, as I did, to cross over it. Well, we're heading now back to Mead. The light is fading, and I couldn't believe my eyes. Is this the Doones charging across the moor? Well, now on another journey, another character in the book, in the novel, is that of Mother Melden. Well, John came to the Valley of the Rocks to visit Mother Melden to talk about his love for Lorna. Well, I thought I was going to have trouble finding the old cave where Mother Melden had lived, but there it was, a sign directed me to it. Well, in the winter months, Mother Melden lived here, in this cave beneath the Devil Cheese Ring. There's a fascinating group of rocks, just like an old cheese ring. Of course, in the summer months, she used to live in a cave near Tar Steps. There's a closer view of the cave. I hope to have a look inside and shortly. There's a fascinating group of rocks is very prehistoric, and I think the whole of the Valley of the Rocks was carved out in the Ice Age when rivers used to run through this area. And this is Mother Melden's cave. We're having a look inside it. She certainly wasn't in when I visited. Not a very big cave, so perhaps she was a small lady. And I think the roof must have leaked terribly. Well, leaving the cave, I'm going to walk down to Ringcliffe Beach. Be careful because it can be a little bit treacherous at certain times of the year. Now, this area is famed for its seabirds nesting on the rocks. I think this girl was having a bit of a paddle in the sea. Well, this beautiful valley, like I say, was carved out during the Ice Age. There's a lot of rock formations here with fascinating names such as Ragged Jack and the Castle. And one of my fascinating ones is that of the White Lady. Now I'm going to zoom into this rock, and if you look more or less into the centre of the picture, I hope you can see the White Lady just as I did. Yeah, I hope you can see her. Well, I decided to have a little walk up to Castle Rock. There was a footpath which leads you up to the top. And the people below, like ants. The footpath you see in the distance there is where we'll be going back in a little while. You get magnificent views of the coastline here. And just above this little piece of coast is a folly tower built into the grounds of the Lee Manor, now a Christian holiday centre. And right beside this steep cliff, we're now on this tarmac walkway, which I saw earlier from Castle Rock. This was paved back in Victorian times, when the Victorians loved to stroll from Linton around the Valley of the Rocks area. And what are these? Look very similar to statues on Easter Island. And just below us is the wild goats of the Valley of the Rocks. This wild herd of goats has been there for several years. Occasionally they do get killed when they start to overrun the cricket pitch nearby. But most of the time I think they're left in peace. There's a youngster nibbling away at the old bracken. Another character in the Lorna Doone story is that of Tom Faggus. Well, Tom, I believe, was a real person, used to live here in North Melden. He was a blacksmith, and his smithy stood opposite the Baltimore Arms, close to the church. The actual smithy building was demolished in 1896. It's well worth looking inside the church. You won't find anything of Tom, unfortunately, but there is a lovely wagon style roof, and memorials to the Banfield family, powerful landowners. It was Sir Robert Banfield that put an unjust lawsuit against Tom. And Tom lost. Unfortunately, he lost his smithy business and was made to go on the road as a highwayman. The memorials here to the Banfields are well worth a look. They're fascinating, and all the little statues represent a family member. Have a good look round inside the church as well. You'll see lovely carved pulpits. And an ancient clock, presented to the church in 1944. And whilst there, I had to look round the local churchyard. Couldn't find anything of Tom, and it says so in their local pamphlet. But to my surprise, in the graveyard stood a grave to a member of the Blackmore family, and right beside that, a one to the member of the Rd family. So the names are popular in the area. Over in South Melden is where Tom loved a young lady by the name of Betsy Paramore. The town itself has a fascinating set of lovely old buildings. The old Guild Hall, the medical hall, the old post office, and a one-way street which circles some of the old buildings. Here's the King's Arms, one of many public houses in South Melden. And this lovely old coach house. I'm not sure the history of this coach house, but it possibly stood here back in Tom's day. Perhaps several of the coaches that came here were held up by Tom. Well, leaving South Melden, we head to Barnstable. It was here that Tom had a fascinating escape. Now, he had a very popular strawberry roan mare by the name of Winnie, and Tom was recognised at a local Barnstable fair, and he made his escape across here, the Barnstable Bridge. But unfortunately, both ends of the bridge became blocked with police officers and soldiers. Tom's only escape was to leap Winnie over the side of the bridge into the river below. I only hope the water was a bit deeper than it is today. Now, back over in Porlock, Tom had another daring escape. He was staying up in the Ship Inn. This is situated at the bottom of Porlock Hill, when locals were all outside the windows with pitchforks, shouting abuse at Tom and waiting for him to come out. He just managed to calmly walk out of the back door, hop on his strawberry roan mare and ride off. Now, this is Exford. White horses galore in all the statues. This, I believe, was a former public house. Right opposite was the large public the White Horse Inn. In Exford, Tom had an interesting escape. He was coming down the hill, down towards the village, and he saw a group of people standing down the bottom with guns waiting for him. They didn't know it was him, of course. He came down on his horse, and a large roll of paper in his pocket. They thought he was an official. Having talked to him and found out what they were waiting for, he told them that the best thing to do is he would wait for him, but if they fired off their pistols because they were damp, in case they didn't fire when he turned up, which they all duly did. And unfortunately for them, as soon as they fired their pistols, Tom withdrew his and stole all their money and rode off into the distance. And so we come to Exbridge. This is on the outskirts of Dulverton. Well, Tom again was in another inn here, the Anchor Inn, right beside the little bridge, when police officers dressed up in old clothes, maybe as servants or old ladies or something like that, they got talking to Tom, and Winnie the mare was out in the courtyard. Before Tom knew it, he was hoisted up off the ground, and by the time he called and whistled Winnie, she was shot in the courtyard. Tom was eventually arrested. Now, there are two stories to it. One says he was hanged in Taunton, but in the Lorna Doone novel, he was eventually given a pardon and lived happily and married Annie, John Ridd's lovely sister. Well, we're now on a short journey up towards the Dunkery Beacon. This is the highest point on Exmoor. And it was here that the Doones used to light the beacon to light their way along the Doone track. And they also celebrated here by firelight after winning several battles with Jeremy Stickles and his band of soldiers. At this point you can see on a clear day over 100 miles all around. Far away is Dartmoor. And so our journey now continues back to Orr Church. This is the Church of St Mary the Virgin. It has been the parish church in Orr for over 800 years. Opposite the church stands the current Orr House, All house stands in the grounds and on the ruins of a former Plover's Barrow farm, John Ridd's house. Much of the inside of the church is still the same as it would have been in John and Lorna's day. And there are memorials here to the Snow family. And it was on John and Lorna's wedding day that his shot ran out, and Lorna fell to her knees, wounded. The shot, of course, was by Carver Doone, who made his getaway towards the Widder's Slough. And that is where I'm going to take you now, on another one of my walks. Well, this is our starting point. This is Robbers Bridge. It was possibly here that John's father was murdered by the Doones. Although the current bridge wouldn't have been around at that particular time, there may have been just a small pathway or footbridge. And as I continue my walk, I go past Pook's cottage. Now, I'm not sure whether Pook's cottage here had anything to do with Master Pook of Porlock. And just past Pook's cottage, we turned left up this track, just through a small farmyard. And just behind you, lovely views of the hills behind. In the distance is Black Hill and Stowy Allotment. Well, we're now heading across Stowy Ridge, which is open farmland. I wasn't too sure of the clouds above me. It did seem to be a bit stormy that day. There'd already been a lot of rain, as you can see by where I'm going through these gates. And the ground beneath is rather wet and peaty. Well, we're now going to head towards South Common. Well, eventually you reach a small track, and as you pass through this gate you come to the ruins of Blackberry Farm. Blackberry Farm was formerly built by the Knight family, Frederick Knight, who had visions of turning Exmoor into massive farmland, but unfortunately his visions never materialised. These lovely old buildings former barns, outhouses and that, and a massive country house, all but ruined. The country house itself was a former shooting lodge. When I was there, I actually met somebody whose mother used to work there as a chambermaid. These beech trees only offer a little bit of protection now, but back in the Second World War, during training, the army used this as more training practice and targets, and unfortunately ruined what a lovely building that was, brought it back to ruin. A sad fate to a lovely building and Frederick Knight's dream. Well, our journey will now continue along the Loch Barrow boundary before turning off to Alderman's Barrows, and we're heading towards the Black Mires. It was underneath the Black Mires that Reuben Huckaback had his gold mines, and it was in this area which I believe is where the Wizard's Slough lies. It was here that John chased Carver across the moors to the Wizard's Slough, a rather boggy area. After a fierce battle between them, Carver lost his footings and slipped beneath the bog. This was the end of terror for the Doones, and the reign finished. Of course, Lorna and John lived happily ever after, as all good novels should end. And it happens to be the end of our visit. There are of course lots of other places to visit associated with Lorna Doone's story and that of Tom Faggus, and I'll leave you to discover those by yourselves. Happy hunting!